Okay, so let's get back into it. Check out my nice green smoothie this morning. I have a smoothie every day. You know, there are those occasional days that slip by you where you don't get the smoothie in, but generally speaking, I have a smoothie every day. It's a great way to get my greens in. And this one's loaded with cilantro, frozen pineapple, a match made in heaven, and chaga mushroom. So, picking up where we left off that morning of the first incident, I left you guys with my reaction to John's rage attack over the coffee, going off at me about how I didn't get any coffee and thank goodness for the roommate or we wouldn't have any coffee. That's when I said out loud, "Who acts like this?" So John heard me say that. You would think like somebody saying something like that would be enough to stop you in your tracks. Again, this is like one of the first displays of this kind of behavior I saw, right? The first incident. As I mentioned before, there was a minor other display of some things, but this was like the first thing that was like, you know, really seemed out of the blue, so to speak. I retreated to my bedroom. I remember just sitting in my chair for a while, having to kind of calm down, because that I felt flooded with adrenaline, just that whole rush of emotion that comes through you in a fight or flight response when you're so confused, like what's happening. And so I was hanging out in my bedroom, and after things started to calm down for me in terms of my nervous system, I remember writing John a letter, just, you know, to get my feelings down on the paper. I really wanted to express to him how much I cared for him and how clearly I saw a future for us and that I really wanted to nurture that future. And I had a really wonderful night with him the night before, and I didn't understand, you know, this turn of events, what the heck happened in the middle of the night, that rage attack at 3 a.m. And then now this, you know, was very confusing to me, and that I was really starting to fall for him. And, you know, I was just kind of pouring my heart out on that paper and letting him know, hey, you know, this is where I'm at. You know, you don't have to be so afraid. You don't have to act like this. Like, what's going on? And at this point, I didn't think his behavior was about me. But I was definitely confused and wanted to be, you know, supportive. Obviously, I knew the coffee thing was apparently about me. But again, it's just that seemed like a really weird sort of superficial, incidental thing. Okay, so he goes and lays down like on his little cot that he had in that spot that I showed you guys. So he lays down there, he's laying down. I don't know how much time passes, you know, 40 minutes, half hour, an hour, but some time passes, let's say an hour. And I had this note for him. I went over to his bed area where he was sleeping, and I just slipped the note down next to him on the floor there for him to see when he got up. I do remember one of the next things being that I came out of the bathroom. This is when he was up, and he had the note, and he was ripping the note up. The love note. He was ripping that to shreds. And then I went outside. I was like, I gotta get away from this guy. And there's a bunch of trails and paths and things and big open space too behind the house. So I was just walking along rather rapidly, walking with urgency and with a purpose, just to vacate the area. Clearly, my efforts and my feelings and none of that mattered. You know, he was willing to just rip up a note that was written with heartfelt feeling. So he's chasing me down the arroyo, and I'm telling him to leave me alone. You know, I'm like walking faster and faster, and I'm like, John, just leave me alone. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Why are you following me? Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. And he's like, can I just have a favor? I just want a favor. Let me just ask you for a favor. Can you just take me to the train, I think it was? And he's like, I'm going to be out of here. I'm going to be out of here in a day or a couple of days. But if you can just take me to the train, I'll be out of here faster. And I'm thinking, what? And I'm like, John, do you even understand what a favor is? A favor is when somebody goes above and beyond what is due. And why the hell would I give you a favor right now? Why would I do you a favor right now, right? Made no sense to me whatsoever. And he keeps pestering me and hounding me, and he's following me, and he's pestering me, and he's hounding me. And I'm telling him, no, you know, find a ride somewhere else. Why would I do you a favor at this point? Just leave me alone, get away from me. He finally leaves me alone, goes back to the house, as far as I remember. This person that I was starting to fall for, and I really liked, and the most amazing lovemaking experiences I ever had, this intimacy that was growing between us. I realized that I'm starting to see these things I don't like too, like, you know, when we do drink together, I don't really enjoy that experience very much. It's not, he changes. Then, you know, being attacked a couple times here and judged and demanding information, things like this, you know, I was like, But I saw enough good too, and there was the intimacy was so profound for me. So, you know, we had made it this far, and then like I said, we had those like 3 weeks that were really great before this first incident. So at this point, for me, I was backing out. I was out. I was like, whoa, this is way too crazy. All of my first initial feelings of like, this is abusive. You know, all that stuff was going off for me enough that I was like, why would I stick around for this? Okay. So that's Saturday, right? And I also realized that, you know, because the roommate had left at one point, and he's like, blah, 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 by the way, you know, John's not welcome at the birthday party. So the rest of this Saturday, I'm just trying to lay low and avoid him, sitting outside. Just remember it's April, so it's like getting nice and warm. Sitting outside reading, talking to my mom on the phone. But I remember I was so uncomfortable, like even trying to relax and read that day was a challenging activity, because I could hear him and feel him behind me in the house, stomping around and slamming doors. Like he would open and close the slamming door occasionally like a maniac, and slam bedroom doors and things. And, you know, he was just like making his presence known to me. And a couple times he threw some things. I don't even remember what he threw, but there were various things that were thrown towards the door, towards me, which I was outside. As Saturday wore on, I finally got myself up and ready, you know, and left. I don't remember if he went out before I left or not, because I know he went out at some point. So then I went to the birthday party, and I was there for several hours. And when I came back, he had returned from his outing. And he had thrown, obviously he had gone through a little bit more of a little like rage. He had thrown these truffles that I had given to him for his birthday. He had chucked them like all over the backyard, right behind the sliding door where it opens. So as I'm coming in the house, returning from the birthday party, I see like, what the heck are all of these brown blobs that are like melting in the sun. Well, they were all of the truffles that I gave him. This is where it gets good. So I come inside the house. He's sitting on the couch, looking pathetic. And I'm back. I was really looking forward to going with him and celebrating his birthday and our roommate's birthday. He wrecked that, so that was not going to happen. He was not going to be there. He was not there, in fact, you know. He was disinvited to his own birthday celebration. When I got home, I saw John. He was sitting on the couch when I came in the back sliding door, and he's just sitting there looking very pitiful. He had calmed down at this point. He had come down from his near 24-hour rage, or however long it lasted. I was hoping that he was just going to be out all night so that I would be home and wouldn't have to worry about him being out there and in the living room and, you know, just being around. So, came into my bedroom and I looked at my bed. So I walked past my bed and I had like clean laundry on my bed and I hadn't folded. And my bed was not made. It's not made now either. I do make my bed though. And I remember glancing at my bed thinking, like, something looks off. It looks like somebody rummaged through my clothes. But I thought, that's impossible. My room was locked. But it wasn't very long before I went back out into the living room and looked at John. I almost say his real name every time. Looked at John on the couch and saw a bottle of liquor next to him that I had actually bought for him for his upcoming birthday, but I hadn't given him yet. And it was his favorite whiskey, apparently. I mean, that's what he told me, that it was his favorite whiskey. So after he told me that this was his favorite whiskey, I bought him this whiskey. He didn't know about it. I put it in my cabinet here in my bedroom, saving it for him for his birthday. Well, he broke into my room, long story short, when I was out at his birthday party and stole the whiskey that I hadn't given to him. At that point, I wasn't going to give it to him. At that point, he did know that I had it for him. I couldn't figure out how he got into my room because the door was locked. However, when I moved into this place, there was no lock on my bedroom door, and I mentioned that to the landlord. John actually installed a lock on my door for me as per the landlord's instructions. And so, you know, I thought, well, maybe he has another key, or maybe he just disassembled everything. Everyone else seemed to think he just took the door off the hinges, which feels like a real pain in the butt, but maybe that's what he did. I don't know. Regardless, he broke into my room and stole the whiskey and drank a good portion of it. Granted, it was intended for him in the first place, but I never gave it to him. And after all of that bullshit that he put us through, and we were not, you know, clearly, you know, things were not moving forward. I don't know why, you know, he would assume that breaking into my room and taking it would be an okay thing. Like, it was still intended for him. And, you know, just because he broke into my room and took something that was intended for him originally, you know, makes it okay. Okay, so I looked at him and I was like, John, how'd you get that? You know, and he's like, ugh. He wouldn't even acknowledge me. And I was like, how did you get the whiskey? And he's all like, ugh. So I'm like, okay, he's drunk. He's out of it. he will not. I was like pushing his body up to try and look him in the face because I was standing in front of him. He's sitting on the couch all like, and I'm pushing his body up so that I'm trying to look him in the freaking eyes and ask him like what the hell he's thinking. But I can't get him to look at me. I also couldn't get him to answer my question, which was, how did you get in my room? Although I did say to him, I knew somebody was in my room because my clothes were messed up on my bed and it looked pushed around in a way that I didn't push it around and leave it. Okay, so this non-responsive creep, I went upstairs and told the landlord that John broke into my room and stole this liquor and has been acting a fool, disturbing the peace, basically. I was really appalled. That he broke into my private locked space. And the landlord was like, what? He had alcohol, blah, blah, blah. So rewind a little bit. Apparently the landlord and John had a deal between them that John would not drink, because apparently he had a drinking problem, and or the landlord thought he had a drinking problem or whatever. Let's just say he has some form of a drinking problem, because I've also said that he doesn't do well on with alcohol, right? And then I also mentioned that he had a DWI just right before that, which was his second DWI. And so after that DWI happened, which was like right around this time of year last year, it's like right after Valentine's Day, he didn't come around for like 3 days. So yeah, backtracking a little bit last year from April back to February, but he didn't come around for a couple of days, and it's because he was in jail for this DWI. He had a conversation with the landlord at that time, and they came up with an arrangement, a deal that John could stay here if he agreed to go into AA and, didn't drink. So he agreed with the landlord that he would do these things. And, he was all like gung-ho for about a week there where he wasn't drinking alcohol. And one night we had dinner and he invited his friend over for dinner with us, and he demanded his friend bring a bottle of wine. Then he complained that the bottle of wine wasn't good enough, like wasn't nice enough. And then, his friend and I drank the wine because John wasn't. And then he started to get all like passive aggressive huffy about we didn't know what, but apparently it was because he was feeling, bad that he couldn't drink. And we all went out for this little like walk, this nice little walk through the trails. And he was just in the worst mood. He was not enjoying himself. Like we were laughing and having a good time, and he's just walking, ahead or behind us. And that was this friend of his that he invited over. I didn't care if the friend came over or not. He's like, oh, I want to have this friend over for dinner. Will you come have dinner with us? And blah, blah, blah. So I remember at one point, like, I was like, okay, like, I want to go to bed. He was like, nah, you stay up with so-and-so. And I'm like, why would I stay up with so-and-so? He's your friend that you invited here. I agreed to have dinner with you guys. He was just in a crotchety bad mood because he couldn't drink alcohol and he was taking it out on us. And he gets into these like moods where he does this sort of passive aggressively, secretly. And this was also an opportunity for me to, be sleeping with this guy I didn't know. So from here on out, this friend who he had invited over, he got thrown into the mix. He got tossed in the mix from time to time when he would go into his rages about me being a whore who would just sleep with XYZ men. I was like, I don't even know this character. At this point, I told the landlord that John had broken into my room, took this bottle of alcohol. The landlord was really upset that John had broken his promise to him. So the landlord proceeded to kick John out, basically. This is not the escalation yet where the cops came and the roommate was involved and John got kicked out. We're not quite there yet. We're like within a 24-hour range. I think the landlord was away for a couple of days, but he was coming back. So I think things were kind of like on pause as far as handling everything. But I know I had this next day off. That was his birthday. That morning, I'm standing in the kitchen and I remember feeling a sense of loss and a sense of sadness. Like all of the drama seemed to have quieted down. Like I said the night before, like I couldn't even get him to like hold his own body up and look at me in the eyes and acknowledge me and what he had done. So he was just on this shoot down. So the next morning, like when he woke up, I guess he had kind of returned to baseline, and I was in the kitchen standing there feeling very, you know, like I just said, like sad and like there was a loss and just reflective and melancholic. So the fact that we lived together just was not good because I never got enough separation from these incidences. So there I am just standing in the kitchen, like with these thoughts and these feelings. And I remember too, like when I woke up that morning, like really wanting to go and look at him sleeping in the bedroom. Because at this point he was sleeping in the roommate's room who wasn't here, which was good because he wasn't just in the living room. And it gave us a degree of separation that was needed. So he's sleeping in there, but so I could like feel my like, you know, soft feelings coming in and wanting to like hug him and hold him and caress him and, you know, talk to him and help him. So he wakes up and he comes out of the room and I'm pretty sure he was naked. I'm standing there. I'm already like deep in thought about him and everything that just happened over the past 24, 48 hours. And he's naked and he's walking towards me and you can just feel this intense energy between us. I've never felt this before. It was an extremely interesting experience, this energy, because it was so strong, the energy, the pull, the energy. Like, I remember feeling like I was going to just drop whatever I had and give myself to this man, to this person. And he just walked straight towards me with this energy and this determination. And I stood there feeling this huge pull. I mean, wow, it was intense. And he lifted me up and my legs went around his naked body and my arms, and he wrapped himself around me and I was wrapped around him. And he carried me off to my bedroom. Of course, while we're passionately making out. And he lays me down on my bed. We made really, really beautiful love. Really beautiful love. God. And I wished him happy birthday. It was his birthday. And we proceeded to have the most beautiful day. Filled with lots of passion and lovemaking and sorries and, you know, wanting to do better and be better, and me devising a plan to help him smooth things over with the landlord so he could stay and all this stuff. And we're sitting in the living room at one point, and the roommate comes in. And he sees John and I together, all cozy, and sees that we've made up, so to speak, you know. And he brought him a piece of cake from the party the day before, and, you know, basically tossed him this piece of cake. Happy birthday, you son of a bitch. And John proceeds to, like, eat the cake, scarf it down. And so the roommate's like, so yeah, what are you doing here? You know, the landlord wants you to leave, you know, you gotta leave now. You messed this up. Blah, blah, blah. So the next thing that occurs was about the first and only time that I ever had John tell me that he felt like I was on his side. And I spent the majority of our relationship trying to show him, prove to him my loyalty, how much I was there for him, how much I was on his team. But in the next instance that's about to come up, this is the only time he actually verbalized it to me. So, next thing to happen was this. The landlord came home, was home that day, something like that, hours before, something like that. Didn't know that John was still here, thought that John had promptly left, you know, listened to him and left. No, that was not the case, right? And in the meantime, him and I had made up as well. But he had to go. That was the scenario. So him leaving basically meant he was going to be going back to the East Coast, because he didn't have any place to be here, stay here. And I was really bummed about that. Really sad about that. Anyway, so we're just sitting there and enjoying, but at the same time, like earlier in the day, we had been talking about how we can figure this out for him. We can find him a place. It's going to be okay. But you know, with the roommate coming in and talking so frankly, like, the energy was starting to shift again. We're starting to feel like a little bit tension, things different. Next thing you know, roommate goes upstairs, is talking to the landlord. The landlord clearly becomes, you know, aware that John is still here, is downstairs, and John suddenly springs into action, gets up, runs up the stairs like a bat out of hell, and starts telling the landlord, which I didn't hear this, but the roommate said to me, because I was down here still, starts telling the landlord that the roommate is an alcoholic and is abusive and blah, 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 all of this stuff, and that he's in love with me and yada, yada, yada. That John's in love with me. He was saying, and I'm in love with Morgan and blah, blah, blah. So, I almost just felt funny saying my own name. I could say my own name. So the roommate hears John's basically throwing him under the bus now and saying all of this garbage and trash about him. And the roommate doesn't take it very well. Like, you know, they come back downstairs and, you know, it's getting heated. There's more tension. He's like telling John, like, basically, like, look, I was trying to go to bat for you. I was trying to smooth things up there for you, trying to, you know, get you some more time here. And you come in and you just throw me under the bus and treat me like this. Especially after the past couple days, how you've been acting here, and then you broke into Morgan's room and blah, 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 right? So things are escalating between them. Next thing I know, they're coming through the living room there, right where those sliding doors are, where John and I had our incidents in July. Anyway, so they're right in that area, and they're physically, they're in a physical altercation now, and there's touching of each other, and they're not punching each other or anything like that, but there's a lot of movement between them. And the roommate picks up a glass bottle, and he's like holding it really close to John's head, and I'm standing there like almost in between them, stupidly. And I'm like, are you crazy? Like, put that down. Are you insane? Put that down. And there was so much like discombobulation and movement of bodies that I was like, oh my God, like I'm gonna get hurt. So I just got out of there and came into my room and shut the door. And I see John like basically getting pushed out the sliding door by our roommate, and he's, fumbling and falling down into the stairwell there with the stairs while the roommate's just like chucking all of his crap outside. Well, the landlord called the cops, and John took off, and there was a report written, blah, 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 the cop thing. But John had taken off, and he didn't come back until the early hours of the next morning. So he slept down in the arroyo somewhere. I don't know. So when he came back around that next day, now at this point, I had to go back to work, and I was working on finding him a place to live that was cheap. And I remember him saying to me that it was the best birthday he'd ever had. He was like, that was the best birthday of my life. Like, we got to spend so much beautiful time together and blah, blah, blah. He was really happy about that birthday. We found him a place to stay, to live, to rent really, really quickly. He stayed here until he was able to move into his new place on May 1st. There were a couple of days, the calm after the storm, where we were just here together. And then he moved. And then I started going over there to see him at his place. Which is where like the relationship really takes a turn and starts to get really crazy. So that being said, that was the first incident, and we've moved through April now. So we're going to enter May, and now we're no longer living together because he got himself kicked out of here. I've seen some of his rage attacks. I broke things off, but then was swept up into the connection and the passion, allowing that trauma bond to start to form more cohesively. And in the meantime, we worked on getting him a place to live. So there was like a lot of new bonding happening between us. And I can tell you that I was like head over heels for this guy, even though that garbage had occurred. I also felt like he was just really scared about what he wanted with us and the love that he was feeling. And, I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, and the intimacy was so amazing and so profound. It just washed everything else away. Really. I was totally blinded, So this is where we're at. The first incident was an opportunity to walk away. But I didn't take that opportunity. And a lot of other really bad things and abuse happened down the road as the relationship progressed. But so many good things happened too. It's weird. Oh my gosh. So, that being said, we've got the trauma bond beginning to develop. We now have, the first time he told me, because we were sitting on those steps out back, where after the roommate had checked all of his stuff out at him, and then the roommate took off at some point, and I was sitting out there with him, like amongst all of his things, and I remember him saying to me that he really felt like I was on his side that day. And that meant a lot to me. I was starting to give up myself and my time more for this person. There is one more thing I'll say. So yeah, I went and retrieved that note, the love note that I wrote him that he tore to shreds and threw in the garbage. I retrieved that at some point in the interim before we had reunited, and I was just feeling that sorrow. And he said to me at one point, he was like, what happened to the letter? I said, I took it out of the trash. And he said, why? And I said, because I didn't want it in the trash. I didn't want to throw it away. I didn't want to see it thrown away. And he was like, oh, well, I'm glad you did, because I went back for it. So he would like say things like this that would really like twist at my heartstrings, because as abusive and insensitive he was also really thoughtful and conscientious too. Interesting dichotomy. Okay, so the next video will be our first time apart. So he moves into his place, and then basically a couple days later, I have to fly to Texas, and then I'm going to be driving my other vehicle back. And it was a very short period of time, just a couple of days. And it was really hard for him, as you can imagine. Basically within hours of me leaving for that trip, I had to start, talking him off the ledge, so to speak. A couple days, if that, after I got back, was the first time he discarded me in a really big way and brutal way, and in a way that was like, now we're in a relationship and I'm his girlfriend. And it happened in the middle of the night over text, after I had just been with him a few hours prior in that evening. So get ready for that jolt. After I take us through the chronology of events, I want to take some time to talk about control. In this case, like backdoor control, because it was in early May, after a few things happened, that he said something to me like, well, at least I'm not controlling. At least I love you and I'm not controlling. And at that time, I remember saying something like, yeah, you're not, you're right, you're not controlling. But I was really wrong. I was also really confused about what I was experiencing at that point. I wasn't able to fully understand and put words to what was happening. But as time went on, I began to understand and realize that no, in fact, John is very controlling. Very controlling. And it's a backdoor controlling. And it's done in a number of ways. There's a number of tactics that involve this type of control. Basically, they get you to self-regulate your own behavior out of fear. And that is an element of controlling you. All right, guys. They're so cute. See you soon.